Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel, Neri the Coder. Today we're going to be talking about conditional branching, or more simply if and else, conditions in JavaScript. How do we deal with it, and how do we do to compare it? How we check for conditions in JavaScript. Before diving into the lectures, please make sure you watch the previous lectures on JavaScript in order to follow along. Let's just dive into the lectures. Conditional branching. What is conditional branching? Sometimes we need to perform different actions based on different conditions. We want to run some block of code based on one condition and then do some other operations based on other conditions. For that, we can use the if statement and the condition operator that's also called a question mark operator. The if statement, so we have two kind of conditional operators over here, but let's just talk about the if statement first. The statement evaluates a condition in parentheses, and if the result is true, execute the block of code. And for example, this is how we do the conditioning over here. So let's just put your quick hands on this. For example, I have a value, we call it, for example, year, and we say, for example, 2015. So we can create our condition over here, our first condition, and we can say if year equal 2015, then run this block of code, or whatever it's in the parentheses. If this condition is met, if this is true, so you can just see that we are doing the strict equality over here. We're also checking the types with this, and if they are equal, then console log, yeah, you are living in 2015. When it save the page and then refresh it, you can see that our statement within the condition is executed. But what happens if this condition is false? For example, we are checking for 2022 because we're living in 2022. If year is equal to 2022, then what happens here? We get no message because we are not printing anything if the condition is not met. If the condition is false, then this statement will not be executed. So yeah, to execute in more than one statement, we have to wrap our code block inside curly braces. So we can just omit the curly braces if we have just one statement that we want to execute after the if condition. But what if we have multiple conditions, for example, like this? Then we have to wrap them in the curly braces. But yeah, this is how it looks. And for example, I just change it to 2015 again, and just refresh. It works as expected. Also, if I get rid of the, for example, the curly braces, and I save it and refresh, it still works. But it's just, well, for one statement you cannot write multiple statements without the curly braces, or it's not really recommended to do it that way. So for better readability, it's good to write your code in curly braces, even if it's a single line of code. So it's very readable. So just we have no much code over here, and that's why we're not ripping it in the curly braces. But if we're dealing with thousands of line of code in one page, in one file, then it's for the better readability. We should have to wrap the block of code within the curly braces after the condition. Boolean conversion. So how it works: the if statement evaluates expression in its parentheses and converts the results to a Boolean. So how it really works, basically. So what happens here is whatever condition you pass over here, so it's basically converted to a Boolean. So just like this, for example, we can also, so it means that we can do something like this, and we can say that is 2015, and we can say year equals 2015. So what it means is it evaluates this value and converts it to Boolean. So it means that the result could be either true or false, and either true or false will be assigned to this variable, and we can just check if the year, if it is the year is 2015, then run this function, then run this statement. So this is how it should work. So yeah, you can see you're still seeing the you are living in 2015 message over here. So based on the true or false conditions on Boolean values, it's making the decision. As we know from the previous lectures, a number, zero, an empty string, null, undefined, and not a number, NaN, all become false. Because of that, they are called falsy values, and other values become true. So we already know it from the previous lecture. If you have not watched the lectures, you don't know about that. So you can just go to my previous lectures and see how it really works. So the code under false condition would never execute. So this code will only execute once if this condition is true. Otherwise, it will not execute the code. Example is this. So for example, if we have, instead of 2015 we have 0 or false, or we have empty string, then this statement will not execute. We can get rid of this for now and just test it, and you can see it's not executed. Or if we change it to, for example, 0 and then refresh, it will not execute the statement. In a similar way, it will not work for false or undefined or null, and we refresh the page, it will not work unless we change it to something meaningful. For example, if I change it to 1, it will run. You can see the output over here. So this is how it works. So for all the number, for number and empty string, null, undefined, and not a number, it will not run. And for the rest of the values, it should. Code with true condition will always execute, we just saw. Example is, for example, if we have a condition that is a valid value, it will just run the condition and the block of code after the condition. We can also pass a pre-evaluated Boolean value of a variable. So what it means here is, as you saw in the previous code, so it's basically this is what we mean by pre-evaluated value. So it basically evaluates the value first, assign it to a variable that is called as 2015, and we can just assign it to this condition. For example, copy it here, paste it, and it should work. You can see it's working fine. So this is what we mean by pre-evaluation of value, and then assign it to a variable and then pass it to the condition. The else clause. So until now we've been talking about the else clause. So let's see what is else clause. The else statement may contain an optional else block. It executes when the condition is falsy. So let's see that if we were just checking about this, if the year is 2015, then just print it out. What happens if the year is not 2015? So we are not printing any message for that. So we can do something like this. Else, you can say you are not living in 2015, or you can just say you are living in 2022. All right. So if this condition is true, then it will execute this statement. If this condition is false, then it will return this value. Just keep in mind that the else part or the else block is completely optional. You don't necessarily have to write it, but yeah, if at some places you may want to write the else part, so you can just do it like that. You can just save it and run. Since the condition is true, it will still return to 2015. What if we make it, for example, 2016, just to make the condition false? So you can just say, when you refresh it, you see you're living in 2022. So yeah, this is how it works. We can also have several conditions using the else if block. So sometimes we would like to test several variants of a condition. The else if clause lets us do it. The the final else is optional, but yeah, let's just see how it really works. So for example, we're talking about the year 2015 over here, and we don't want to edit yet, but we want to check for another condition. For example, I want to check for if the year is 2016. So to do that, I can simply do if year. I can write the condition directly over here. Year equal 2016. Then I can say you are living in 2016, or so this is another condition. I have to do it this way. Else if the year is 2016, then run this. If the condition is this condition is true, then it will run this. If it is false, it will just come to this condition, and it will, if this condition is true, then it will run this. Otherwise, it will, I'll just add another condition, else if, for example, and I'll type year 2017. So it will just get started from this, then come to this condition if it is false, and it will come to this condition. If this condition is also false, and it will just get to this default condition. You're living in another year. That will just throw you another error, the default error. But this is, as I mentioned before, this is totally optional. You can omit it, or if you still want to leave it there, you can just put it there. But what condition is true in this scenario? So you can see that this condition only meets 2015. So for now, we will just see this first message. So let's just test it out and see how it really looks. So you can see the message from 2015. What if we just make it, for example, 2017, how it really looks now? So you can see you are living in another year, okay, because the condition didn't meet. So you can see the year is not equal to 2017, it's just 2015. What if we change it to 2017? You can, so before going there, let's just see how it worked. So it checked if the year is 2015, it compared the year with 2017, so it didn't work because the year was 2015 before. So this condition is false. Now it came to this block and it checked if the year is 2016, but no, it is still 2015. This condition is false as well, so it skipped this one as well. And it just came down to this condition and checking if the year is 2017. Still no, because the year is 2015 still. So it does not execute this statement as well. And it, by default, it will just execute this. It doesn't have any condition, but yeah, this is the last part. This default value that it will return. What happens if I just change it to 2017 and then refresh the page? You can see you're living in 2015. There is just a slight mistake, I think. If the year is 2015, sorry, it should be 2017. And if it is 2017, 2015, oh yeah, it meant because it should be 15, sorry. And I refresh it, you can see you are living in 2017 because now the condition are met. And we are good. So this is how the if else and the else if condition really works. So you can specify a single condition and then put the else block after this, or you can specify multiple conditions using the else if blocks, and you can write your own code over here, different block of codes over here, and execute it. Otherwise, you can also put the default else condition over here. So yeah. The final else is optional, and then we'll talk about conditional operator. Sometimes we need to assign a variable depending on a condition. So how do we assign a value to a variable based on some certain condition? The so-called conditional or question mark operator let us do that in a shorter and simpler way. Operand, operand, operand. So this is basically, we call it a ternary operator as well, and this is basically a way to do that, or a way to write, conditionally assign a value to a variable. And as I mentioned, sometimes you call it ternary because the operator has three operands. It has three operands over here. So let's just quickly look into that, and I'll just get rid of this code first. So for example, I'll just put another value into this. For example, I put it here, and I check for this. For example, I'll just say name equals something. For example, if I want to check if year is equal to 2022, then the name should be John. Otherwise, the name should be John. Otherwise, it should be Jane. So this is basically a shorter way of writing conditions rather than doing it on with the if else. If we want to write it with the if else, how we can do that? Let's just, for example, let's just forget about it for now. And let's assume we have a variable called name, and we don't have any value in this, for example, and we want to assign this variable name some value based on some condition. For example, the condition is if year equal to 2022, then what you can do is name should be John. Otherwise, then assign the value John to the name. Otherwise, assign Jane to the name, or we can just change it to something else. For example, John Doe. So this is how we can assign a value to a variable. And if I console log the name, what we will get, whichever condition is true. So we are getting John because this condition is true, because the year is 2022. What if we say the year is what if we're checking for example 2021? What happens now? We'll get another value from the else part, that is Doe. So this is how we can do assign value conditionally to a variable. But there is a shorter way that I just wrote before this. So we can do something like this in a single line. We have written 4 or 5 line of code, but we can do it in a single line. So here is the condition, and then this is the if part, and this is the else part. So if the year is 2022, then assign John to the variable name. Otherwise, assign Doe to the variable name. So let's just save it and refresh. We are getting John as a result. What if we change it? If I change it to, for example, 2021, now the condition will not meet. And if I refresh it, I'll get Doe. So this is how we, write the if else in shorthand in a ternary way. Multiple conditional or ternary operations. A sequence of question mark operators can return a value that depends on more than one condition. We can do that as well, but yeah, before going to the end, for example, here's one other thing. We can nest this, for example, in the if condition or in the else condition. We can do another thing. For example, we can also check for another thing. For example, I have another variable that is called month, and I say that month is January, and I do something like, for example, if month I'm checking for another condition. If month equal February, then do for example, hey February. I'll just do the short form. Otherwise, I'll just put December. It's just for fun. So this is basically a condition inside a condition, so nested conditions. And what happens if I print it now? So you can see December, because what happens here is year is equal to 21, so no, it doesn't meet. So at 1.20 the John value, it will come to this condition, to the else part, and here we have written another condition that's called month equal February. If this is met, but it's not meeting because it's not February, but the month is actually January. So it, instead of printing this value, the F part, it prints out December. But what happens if we change it to February? Then I'll get the Feb value. So this is how the nesting of the ternary operators or if else condition works in JavaScript. So I hope you have learned something new in this video as well, and you would know as of now how the conditions really work in JavaScript and how we can write, nested conditions, and what is if else, and how we can write multiple conditions. Please like and share the video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure to press the bell icon for future updates. And until then, I'll see you in the next lecture.